21. Isra. 1, 2, 5, 6, 75, 100, and 12, 88, 89, 10, 2. I can see, but I find myself counting my steps all the same, counting to stay calm, to retain control, counting until the numbers lose their meaning and my mind is a jumble of circles and curves and slashes. The hourglass of an 8, the dangerous corner of a 7, the soft belly of a 6. I trace their shapes in the air as I walk, my fingers busy at my sides, frantically trying to bring order to the world. But even as numbers are powerless against chaos, disorder, madness, I'm beside myself, outside myself. I watch my long body glide down the streets filled with the twisted and the wrong, and everything is upside down, inside out. I look down, expecting to see the sky beneath my feet and my heart settled into my skin on the outside of my chest, but there's only the shimmer of green in my dress, tight at my bust, tighter still at my waist, but loose enough near the ground. Loose enough for hands with missing fingers to reach out, to brush the fabric as Beau and I pass by. This particular hand belongs to a child, a girl with only 3 fingers, a wee thing with silky black hair that hangs over her face, partially concealing the fact that her nose is missing pieces of skin, maybe bone. Skin and bone. I don't know. I can't look too closely. Not at her, or her parents, or all the others gathered by the side of the street to kneel as I walk by. I just can't. I lift my eyes and find a tiny rectangle of blue sky high above the laundry line zigzagging between the intimidating buildings of the city center. These towers make mine look like a child's toy. They are breathlessly tall, and each one overflowing with people. The people must live 3 or 4 to a room at least, if the amount of laundry is anything to judge by. Hundreds of pants and shirts and dresses and overalls and underthings hang like uninspired flags, blocking most of the sunlight, drooping limply towards the street, where their owners were ordered to assemble this morning, to meet their queen and let her look upon them with her new eyes. I demanded that the royal gong be rung and messengers be sent throughout the city, instead of walking through the city center, the better to see my people. I would not be swayed. Now, it's all I can do not to turn and run back to my tower. I long for the comfort of my darkness, my ignorance. I want to go back and undo it all. I want to be the Isra my father worked so hard to create. If only I'd known how easy it had been in my cage, with my velvet blinders always in place. My scrap of blue sky vanishes, and my gaze drifts down to the street ahead, where a woman without arms or legs sits propped in a chair beside several little boys. A mother who can never hug her sons, or hold her babies. How did this happen? How? A choked sound escapes my lips, bursting free before I can contain it. "Are you all right?" Beau asks, from his place beside me. "No," I whisper. "Of course I'm not. Of course not." I press my tongue to the roof of my mouth, stopping the stream of babble. I can't lose control in front of my people. I can't show them how unprepared I am. I can't be like my mother. The tower, my mother. I pull in a labored breath. This is why. "Yes," Beau says. "In her home city, the nobles lived within a second wall at one edge of their dome, kept entirely separate from the common people. She had never seen a human who was not of noble blood before she came to Yuan." Beau's hand is firm in the center of my back, guiding me relentlessly onward, through the city center, to what lies ahead, to what I've demanded to see. I want to twist away, to order him to keep his hands off me, but I can't. His touch is the only thing keeping me going. If he withdraws, I'll stop walking and be stranded in the middle of the nightmare. Nightmares upon nightmares. I had the fire nightmare again this morning, saw the woman's mouth open and close in the burning wood, but this time I listened harder, the way Jem told me to, and I would have sworn I heard her speak. She was saying something about the truth, about hope, something important. When I woke, I couldn't remember exactly what she'd said, but I was bursting with happiness anyway. I could see the golden miracle of the sunrise shining through my window, the brilliant bleeding of red on my quilt, and Needle's tightly curled smile as she brought my breakfast tray. My life and my dreams were changing, and I was certain my city wasn't going to be far behind. This morning, Yuan was a riddle I was confident I could solve. But this is a disaster, a tragedy, hopeless. Now you see why your father felt he had to take such extreme measures, Bo continues, increasing his pace until I have trouble keeping up. My dress is wider at the bottom than my other dresses, but it's still tight at the thighs. Still, I don't complain. I don't care if I have to wiggle and wobble down the street like a fool. The sooner we leave the city center and all the damage behind, the better. He was only trying to protect you. He thought if you remarried unaware of certain truths that you would be spare of your mother's madness. It was only after she came here that she became strange. She grew even worse after you were born. At first, the healers dismissed it as the same sadness that sometimes comes over new mothers, but then she began talking of going into the wilderness to speak to the Monstrous. Father says she set the fire not long after. I don't say a word, though I want to ask if Bo knows why my mother wanted to speak to the Monstrous. I've always known Mother was Father's second wife and foreign, a noble from far away who married my father to escape a city on the verge of collapse, but I've never heard anyone speak of her expressing the desire to make contact with the Monstrous. Why would she want to do that? I want to ask, but I don't trust myself to speak without breaking down. When Bo first told me it was my father who had ordered the poisoning of my tea, I nearly slapped him. I was certain he was lying. I refused to believe that my father would steal the sight from his only daughter, even when Genji showed me the signed order bearing the king's seal. I just couldn't believe Baba hated me that much. Now I understand. My father didn't hate me. He was trying to spare me from the heartbreaking truth. I wanted to protect you too, Bo says, louder now that we've reached the edge of the city center and only a few citizens kneel at the sides of the street. I planned for you to remain in the noble's village, where the people are whole. There was no reason for you to see this particular truth. His hands on the sides of my waist, his familiar touch becoming openly intimate, making my breakfast gurgle angrily in my stomach. I swallow hard and step away. Yes, there is. I needed to know I had to... My words dribble away as we pass by the final knot of people. Beyond them, the world opens up, the wide dirt road continuing through the fields. I want to rush ahead into that open space, but instead I force myself to nod and smile a brittle smile that the subjects kneeling in the grass at the edge of an orchard of bare-limbered trees. There are 3 men and 5 women, all wearing orchard workers' overalls, and all with missing parts. They are ripped pieces of dozens of different puzzles that will never fit together, and I don't understand it. I can't. I thought, the banished camp is worse, I whisper, when we finally pass the last woman. I find little comfort in the even rows of fruit trees on one side of the road, and the perfectly ordered grape trusses on the other. Beyond these tidy fields, at the end of this road, lies the place where the banished, the people deemed too grotesque to inhabit the city center, live out their abbreviated lives. Far worse, Bo confirms, hesitating at my side. We can go back to the Great Hall if you'd like. I can... No. I lift my chin and move past him on stiff legs. I need to know the truth. I can tell you the truth. Let me do that for you, he says, hurrying to catch up, what sounds like real compassion in his voice. He's been unfaringly kind this morning, like the beau I knew before last night, but I'm not fooled. I will never trust him. Not ever, no matter how helpful he tries to be. Thank you, but no. I pull my shawl tight around my shoulders and aim myself towards the royal carriage waiting for both of us by the side of the road. The driver is an elegant old man with silver hair, supposedly a commoner like all the noble servants, but without damaged parts, at least, none that I can see. His defects must be hidden inside, like needles. Selfishly, I'm glad of it. I need a moment, just a moment. Please, Isra. Beau stops me with a hand on my arm. Let me spare you any more of this. Why? I suddenly shake off his fingers as I glance back over my shoulder, finally able to pinpoint what's been plaguing my mind. Now that I have some distance from the city. I care about you. I told you that last night. No, not that, I snap, unable to bear talking feelings at a time like this. Why are the people damaged? How has this happened? I thought the covenant was strong. The covenant is strong, Beau says. It's been this way since the beginning. You know the legend. Those families who refused to sign the covenant did not receive equal protection from its magic. I thought that meant they had fewer goods, smaller houses, I say, voice louder than I meant it to be. I didn't think it meant It means they suffered from this planet's dark magic. They weren't made monstrous, but the humanity was not preserved in the same way that those of noble blood are preserved. They suffer from a different sort of mutation. My brow wrinkles, and for the first time in more than an hour, my thoughts begin to organize themselves. But the monstrous look nothing like that. What's happened to our people isn't mutation, it's something else. Something like what? He asks. I don't know, something dark, something unnatural. Yearning for Gem grips me so fiercely it feels like my stomach is climbing up my throat. The thought of talking this madness through with him gives me strength, and more important, reminds me, I'm not sure. I turn to Beau, but perhaps the covenant will offer some insight. I'd like it to be brought to my rooms this afternoon. He blinks, as if I snap my fingers between his eyes. The covenant? Yes, the covenant, I say. Have it delivered to the tower immediately. I'll be keeping it overnight. That should give Needle and me some time to sneak over to see Gem. By the moons, I can't wait to see him, to feel his arms around me, his chest warm and solid beneath my cheek, making the world feel steady and possible again. Night can't come quickly enough. We should go, I say. The driver is waiting. But Beau's mouth opens and closes as I circle around him and climb into the royal carriage for the first time in my life. I was looking forward to the ride this morning, the wind in my hair, the field's rushing path on both sides, but I can't imagine taking pleasure in this simple thing, not when there's so much suffering under the dome. Isra, I can't have the covenant delivered. Beau climbs up beside me, clearly deciding he deserves to sit in the carriage, rather than ride on the step at the back with the other guards. It's impossible. What's impossible? The covenant was lost, he says, hundreds of years ago, not long after King Sato died. What? I want to believe he's lying, but he seems genuinely confused, completely at a loss. Lost? The covenant is lost. How could that be? How could something so important be lost? King Sato hid the covenant for safekeeping, Beau says, giving the signal for the driver to start the horses. The silver-haired man flicks his whip, and the buggy lurches forward, throwing me back against the seat. Beau steadies me with an arm around my shoulders. I'm too horrified to push it away. He died before he could tell his last wife where it was hidden. But that's... King Sato was our third king. That means no one's read the Covenant in 600 years? I squeak. Or more? It's all right. He has the nerve to smile. Our history isn't lost. There are other texts that tell us all we need to know. And the sacred words spoken at each royal wedding are engraved on a gold tablet that will hold between us on the day we take our vows. Bo pulls me closer until I'm wedged beneath his armpit, my spine crunched and my breath straining across my back. Don't worry, the Covenant is strong. The damaged people have been that way for generations upon generations. They don't suffer from it the way we would. They aren't like us. Then what are they like? I squirm free and scoot to the other side of the buggy. Bo's expression hardens with the sarcasm in my voice, but to his credit, he maintains his patient tone. They aren't monstrous, but they aren't human in the way we are either. They don't know any other kind of life. They're happy with what they have, to be a part of our city, to be safe, fed, and protected. He sounds like he's telling the truth, but that doesn't mean anything. He could think he's telling the truth, the way I did every time I assured Jem I was tainted, and still be telling a lie. I know for a fact he's wrong about my people's suffering. I could see the pain in their eyes. I could feel the hard facts of their life weighing on me as I walked among them, dragging me down until it felt like my feet were moving beneath the surface of the ground. You said there were other texts, I ask, brushing a lock of hair from my face, finding no joy in the wind that whips it back into my eyes. There are, he says. Would you like me to have those delivered to your rooms? Yes, right away. I try to feel optimistic about what I'll learn in the texts, but I can't. Something deep inside insists that all I'll find in those writings are more lies. I'll have to find the Covenant. I have to discover where it was hidden so long ago. And I can think of only one place to look for help. One thing that's been around for more than 600 years and still has eyes to see. The roses have deceived me as often as anyone else has. But tonight I'll make it clear that I won't tolerate lies. They will give me what I want, the truth and nothing but. Or I will refuse them their offering. Even the thought is enough to make my head spin and my heart thrash against my ribs. But I can't help but think, what if the stories of Jem's people are true? If so, wouldn't my people be better off in the desert? Better off transformed than forced to live with missing pieces? The nobles and soldiers and some of the merchants are still whole, but the overwhelming majority of my people are suffering, not thriving, under the dome. Maybe if Yuan is abandoned, if the other domed cities are abandoned as well, maybe if we all go into the desert together, maybe I won't have to die. Maybe Jem was right. Maybe there is another way. The thought should renew my flagging hope, but it doesn't. My entire life I have been afraid to die, but at least I thought I had something worth dying for. Now, I have nothing. A terrible mess I don't know how to clean up, and the certainty that I will find no help from those in power in the city. The whole have beauty, pleasure, comfort, and abundance, and they've convinced themselves they deserve it, because they are more human than the people who suffer in the city center, or the banished in their lonely camps, or the monsters starving in the desert. I'll never be able to convince them differently. Yuan will never change, not unless I can find proof that something is wrong with the city. The nobles are spoiled and soft and inclined to gossip, but they are not evil people. I must convince them that Yuan is rotten at its core. I must find the Covenant and discover why it was hidden away. Bo. The morning lasts forever. The afternoon is even longer. By the time I finally sit down on the carved wooden bench outside the court meeting chambers, I'm exhausted. Isra insisted on seeing every part of the Banished camp. The shelters, the feeding troughs, the burial pit, even the trench filled with their bodily waste. It was unspeakably repulsive. The other soldiers stayed at the perimeter with the guards charged with keeping the Banished contained in the corner of Yuan, but I was forced to walk among them. I couldn't leave Isra's side for a moment, not if I wanted to be seen as her equal, and someday soon, her better. Today's insanity shouldn't make that very hard. What kind of queen willingly walks among the Banished? What kind of queen tries to talk to people who aren't much more than monsters? And all of them out of what's left of their minds. Even Isra learned quickly enough. By the time the fourth or fifth Banished ran, screaming nonsense when she tried to approach, she learned to keep her distance. Still, she refused to leave right away. She stayed and asked questions about their treatment, their feeding schedule, about their living arrangements, and finally, why the Banished weren't allowed into the city center with the rest of the people, since many of them seemed less damaged, physically anyway, than the people she'd seen there. I was shocked that she needed an explanation. It's obvious to anyone with eyes, even new eyes, that the Banished display monstrous traits. They have patches of scales and huge teeth and hands with pieces of claws exposed outside their skin. They creep and crawl and cower like the beasts they are. They run from any whole citizen in fear, sensing, I suppose, in some part of their wretched brains, that we are their enemies, that they are our enemies, that the monstrous they resemble want to destroy us, and our way of life forever. They're lucky we let them live, I finally said, too astonished by Isra's complaints about the mistreatment of the creatures to mind my tongue. Other cities smother them at birth, or put them outside the gates to starve, or worse. We are the gentlest of domed cities, Isra. We always have been. Isra went pale at that, as if she couldn't imagine anything more terrible. She spent too much time with that creature. It's more clever than most. It speaks our words and plays at being like us, but the beast is feral beneath the facade. It plots the downfall of our city. I can sense it. I saw it in his face last night on Isra's balcony. He wanted nothing more than to kill me, the way his people have killed mine for centuries, though I have done nothing but treat him with a civility a prisoner scarcely deserves. But he'll be taken care of soon enough. I spoke with Father before Isra went into his meeting chambers to discuss the tour of her city. He agreed the monstrous would have to be disposed of as soon as I am made king of Yuan. The safety he affords isn't worth the risk he poses. The entire court has been on edge since the day Isra insisted on working with the creature. He hasn't hurt her yet, but we'd be fools to think he isn't planning to. We'll kill him before he gets the chance to deal with the... Yes, I agree. Isra's voice drifts from the shade of an arbor, covering the front entrance of the court's offices. In the spring, purple flowers will hang down far enough to trickle on top of her hair as she walks beneath. Bees will hum, and the air will be warm and sweet, and we will be married. And I will have the power to tell her to go to her tower and stay there if she refuses to listen to reason. The thought makes it easier to smile as she emerges into the watery afternoon light, followed closely by my father. He is dressed in his faded amber advisor's robe, the one with the slightly frayed sleeves worn by 3 generations of chief advisors to the royals of Yuan. The robe softens his rough edges, makes him seem more approachable than his soldier's uniform. I'm sure the choice of clothing is no coincidence. He wanted Isra to feel comfortable with him today, to feel confident that he was listening to her concerns and opinions. I'll start organizing the documents at once, Father says, stopping less than a foot away, but not cutting his eyes in my direction. He tilts his head back to look Isra full in the face, as if he has never found anyone more enrapturing. I'll send them to the tower for your review as soon as they're finished. And when will that be? Isra asks, fingers twirling absent-mindedly in her sides, the way they have all day. I grit my teeth and force my eyes away from her fidgeting. It is enough to drive me mad. If I'd fidgeted like that as a child, my father would have bound my hands in cotton. I want to start the process as soon as possible. Things can't continue as they have. Certainly not, Father nods, but I see how his eyebrows draw tightly together. I'll have the first drafts of the amendments to the code drawn by late tomorrow, the next day at the latest. That isn't soon enough. Isra's fingers move even faster, tracing an elaborate, repeating pattern I can't begin to sort out. I need them sooner, at least the amendment related to the treatment of the Banished. I'd like to see a draft of that tonight. Tonight it is, then. Father's forehead smooths, and the hint of a smile gentles his lips. He looks as pleasant as he ever does, even more so, actually, but I'm not fooled. I'll work through dinner and have the amendment delivered to you in the Great Hall as soon as I'm finished. The texts you requested on the covenant should already be waiting in your rooms. I ordered them sent before we sat down to chat. Thank you. Isra's breath rushes out, and her fingers finally still. But have the amendment sent to my rooms as well, please. I won't eat in the hall tonight. I need some time alone. It's been quite a day. Indeed, Father smiles. I've never discussed this many amendments to our code of law in the course of a year, let alone one afternoon. Isra bites her lips and shoots Father a wary look from beneath her long lashes. I know this must seem strange, but I'm certain this is right, and the only way to move forward. I think Baba, what he did, giving me the herbs for all those years. Your Baba loved you very much, Father says, apparently not minding if Isra uses childish words. Never doubt that. I know. I believe he did, she whispers in a trembling voice, but when she lifts her chin, her expression is calm, strong. I was shocked, at first, but I think the choice Father made was for the best. He gave me fresh eyes. He allowed me to see Yuan and our people in a way those who have lived in the midst of this confusion no longer can. Being an outsider and ignorant of many things has allowed me to see where our city has gone astray. Father inclines his head in a gesture so subservient it makes my jaw drop. An interesting and wise perspective. Isra glances my way, and I hurry to return her hopeful smile. Thank you, she says, turning back to Father. I'm glad we could come to an agreement, and I'm grateful for your support. I know the advisors will find the changes easier if you're there by my side when I announce them. Certainly, Father says. Change, even drastic change, can sometimes be the only way to move forward. Isra's smile is dazzling, and for a moment I remember why I wanted to marry her. She's lovely in her happiness. So lovely, it makes me ill to know this moment isn't what she thinks it is. I know my father hasn't been won over so easily. I know, even before he puts a hand on my shoulder and says, Beau, would you join me in my chamber? I have some business I'd like you to attend to while I draft the amendments Isra and I discussed. He shifts his attention to Isra with another kindly smile. If that's acceptable, my lady. If you'd rather Beau escort you back to the rooms first, then— No, don't worry about me, Isra says, her smile still lighting her face. I have my guards, and Needle is waiting for me. She watches with a satisfied expression as Father and I bow. Until later. And then she turns and glides away, the confidence in her new walk making her seem like a different person from the girl who scurried across the field to her tower rooms a week ago. I watch her greet her guards, with a hint of guilt worming its way into my heart. I told myself I didn't care about the Queen anymore, but I can't help but feel bad for her, to fear for her. She's barely out of sight when my fears are confirmed. We'll have the wedding tomorrow, Father whispers. Prepare yourself. It might be an unpleasant ceremony. But her mourning period isn't over. Mourning rituals are strictly observed in our city. It's bad luck to go against them. Such bad luck that the advisors decided it was better to leave Isra unmarried for several months rather than go against the grieving customs. I know, and it may bring dark days to Yuan to have her married while still wearing green, but there's no help for it. The girl is out of her mind. Father waves a weary hand through the air. The other advisors were listening in on our conversation with Isra. They sent this just before the conclusion of our meeting. He hands me a note on parchment paper, written in the unmistakable, cramped, slanted hand of Tai, the late king's oldest advisor and the man second in power only to my father. The girl has fallen prey to her mother's weakness. She is no longer fit to rule. Arrange for the marriage to your son and take place tomorrow morning. We'll compel the union if we must. The law allows it in cases like these. We must secure the safety of our city first. Once a new king sits on the throne, we'll decide how best to keep Isra safe from herself. They think she's mad? I ask, shocked. Though I shouldn't be. I've had similar thoughts all day, but when the word insane flitted through my head, I didn't mean it. Not really. Isra is odd and stubborn and strange, no doubt, but she's not out of her mind. At least, not in a dangerous way. But Father, I don't. You should have heard her, son, Father says with a sigh, plucking the parchment from my fingers. She wants to put an end to the Banished camp and bring those pitiful creatures into the city center to live with our people. I lean in, certain I've heard him wrong. But she saw them. They're animals. They barely speak our language. They lack the sense to keep their waste in assigned trenches, and ran from us at every... She thinks they're afraid. Father sighs again before shuffling over to the bench and easing himself down. He looks older than he ever has before, as if the meeting with Isra has aged him 10 years. More. She saw the bruises on their bodies. She thinks the guards beat them, and that's why they run from whole citizens. They beat them because they attack each other, I say, pacing in front of the bench. They'd tear each other apart if the guards didn't keep them in line. Father lifts his hand in the air. I tried to tell her, but she wouldn't listen to reason. She thinks the Banished could learn to speak our language and behave properly if they received different treatment. She's stubborn. I curse myself not for making the facts clearer to her. I'm willing to go against her wishes once we're married, but I wanted our marriage to be her decision. I know Isra well enough now to realize that her marriage won't be pleasant if she's forced into it. Let me talk to her. Maybe I can convince her to change her mind. It isn't only the Banished, Father says. She wants to improve conditions for the commoners in the city center as well. She wants to build more housing and provide nurses for those with the worst deformities, and no family care for them. Now it's my turn to sigh. Where will we get the resources to build? We can't cut down the trees. We need them to refresh the air. Father shakes his head. She thinks we should tear down the king's cottage and a number of other noble cottages and use those materials. What? I laugh. The idea is ridiculous. And where will the nobles without homes live? In the barns with their horses? She thinks the noble families can learn to be comfortable sharing a home with another family. She what? She's out, I almost say, out of her mind, but bite my tongue at the last moment. She doesn't understand. She's been kept separate from our people. She doesn't know how things work and that no one is bothered by it but her. At least give me one day to make her see reason. Father's head stays down when he lifts his eyes, emphasizing the brown shadows beneath. He's exhausted, and I can't help but feel responsible. If I hadn't told Isra to stop drinking her tea, all of this could have been avoided. She also wants to send food into the desert, Father says, to the monstrous tribes. It's as if he struck me. She doesn't. She can't. She says she'll send the monstrous boy with a wagon. She believes he'll come back if he's released. Exhaustion settles into my bones, and I wish Father would ask me to sit beside him. There's no hope, then. Isra might not be mad, but she's wandered too far outside the realm of even what I can tolerate. The Monstrous deserve nothing from our city. Isra's ideas are too radical, and she herself is too different to be good for Yuan. I'm sorry, Father says, as he rises from the bench to stand beside me. I know you had hopes of a different sort of marriage, but I was prepared for this from the beginning. Your mother and I will help you through this ceremony and everything that comes after. What do you mean? She can't be allowed her freedom, he says, regret clear in his eyes. She's a danger to herself and to the people, to the city itself. We'll have to keep her contained in the tower. I nod, but my stomach roils inside me. I threatened to lock her away myself, but I didn't really mean it. I don't want my wife to be a prisoner. If only Isra could see reason. If only she could be less... Isra. It won't be too terrible for her, Father says, as if sensing how much I loathe the idea. She spent most of her life there. She'll have her entertainments and her maid as a companion, and you may visit her any time you wish. She won't want me to visit her. She'll hate me. No, she'll hate me. Father grips my shoulders. Let me bear this burden. I'll make it clear it's my decision, not yours. No, it's my fault, all of it. If I hadn't told her, if you hadn't given her sight, we would have had more time, Father says. But the end would have been the same. I knew that, Beau. I knew it the day she insisted on working side by side with a monster that could kill her in an instant. She's put the entire city at risk. She's selfish and childish at best. At worst, she's on the path to becoming as mad as her mother. He sighs. His arms drop to his side. The king should have never married an outsider. Were all the people of New Persia mad? I know the story. That King Yujia married a woman from across the planet who arrived in the last of her people's flying carriages, fleeing the city on the verge of collapse in the wake of the monstrous attack, but I never thought to wonder anything more. No, not that I know of. It was a small city, but they kept their technology functioning throughout the centuries, he says, motioning to the servant waiting in the shadows, beneath the arbor, indicating that we need drink. In the beginning, the king was more interested in the technology than the wife. He wanted to see what our ancestors had given up when they'd adopted our more primitive way of life. He agreed to marry the king of New Persia's youngest daughter, only if the flying machine used to deliver her was also his to keep. He kept the flying machine? What would it be like to see something like that? Something from long ago, built on another world. Where is it? Father's brows lift, clearly disapproving of my interest in the machines our ancestors chose for us to live without. They believed technology was evil and led to the destruction of our old planet. It's in pieces, he says. Its parts put into other uses. The new Parisians failed to send fuel. Without it, the machine was useless. There was no way to lift it off the ground, or to send Queen Kanya back to where she'd come from. He turns, fetching a goblet of peach juice from the tray the servant has brought. When the tray is shifted before me, I wave it away. I'm thirsty, but it seems wrong to sip something sweet at a time like this. But by then the king didn't want us to send her away, Father continues. Kanya was a beautiful woman. Very tall, bold-featured, nothing like our women, but beautiful. As Isra is beautiful. And she was kind and gentle before the madness took her. I think on that for a moment, of Isra's mother and the madness, and beauty, and other things passed down from parents to their children. There will be no children for Isra and me, I say, unable to imagine Isra tolerating me in her bed. It's for the best, Father says. Better to wait and try to be a true husband with your second wife. My second wife. I haven't even taken my first. It's too much. I can't think about it. Not now. I'll think about it tomorrow night, when Isra and I are married, and I am king. Surely all of this will seem more manageable then. If you don't need me, I'll go back to the barracks, I say with a deep breath. I could use some time to myself. Go, I'll have dinner sent to your room. He drains the last of the liquid. After dinner, we'll discuss how to take care of the other matter. The other matter? The Monstrous. He holds out his goblet. The servant and tray magically appear to claim it and whisk it away. You should kill it tonight. Now that Isra's been deemed incompetent, there's no reason to wait. The marriage will go forward with or without her consent. I swallow. I didn't think Father would expect me to kill the Monstrous myself, but I should have. You're right, I say, refusing to show how unnerved I am by the prospect of slaughtering the beast. The night before my wedding, no less. I'll choose my best men. We'll go to the creature's room tonight and kill it in its sleep, if possible. Father smiles, that same smile from last night, the one that assures me he's proud of who I'm becoming. A wise plan, and a merciful one. His voice is as silky as it was when he praised Isra for her keen perception, and for a moment I wonder. I stop the thought before it can find the other half. I don't wonder anything. I know what must be done, and I will do it. And come tomorrow night, all the terrible things will be over.